Good morning and welcome viewers. You're watching NewsX and I'm Vaishali Kohli. Now the President of Iran, Masoud Pezeshkian, and US President Donald Trump have officially signed a memorandum of understanding between Tehran and Washington, with the agreement completed digitally and remotely. According to reports, the development marks a significant diplomatic step as both sides confirmed the electronic signing of the interim framework aimed at advancing negotiations on key issues, including regional security and sanctions relief. The White House has now released the text of the memorandum, bringing the agreement officially into the public domain and confirming key details of the deal. Let's now take a comprehensive look, viewers, at the 14 points of the Memorandum of Understanding. And now let me show you that on the big screen. Now let's talk about the 14-point Iran-US Memorandum. What are the pointers? Let's discuss that first. Point number 1 is immediate permanent ceasefire on all fronts, including Lebanon. So that's the first point. Let's move to the second one. Now, respect sovereignty and no internal interference is the second point, which is, of course, the most important matter of contention here. That's point number 2. Let's talk about point number 3. Commit to final deal within 60 days. So this, viewers, as we were discussing in the previous bulletin as well, this is a framework. But of course, a proper deal should come within 60 days. Now, the US ends naval blockade within 30 days is the other condition in this memorandum of agreement. Now, Iran ensures free Strait of Hormuz passage, another important point that's been put by the US. $300 B-plus plan for Iran, reconstruction and development. So $300 billion plus is the figure that we're talking about, where Iran is saying that we need this money to reconstruct everything that has been a result of the devastation. US terminates all sanctions on agreed schedule. So this is, of course, the 7th point, another important point, that US terminates all sanctions. Iran, no nuclear weapons. Iran should have no nuclear weapons. Downblend stockpile under IAEA is another condition being put. But as we saw earlier, viewers, that Trump has said that ballistic missiles are fine. Now, he said that while other countries can have it, why not Iran? Maintain nuclear status quo until final deal. So that's another condition that's been put, to maintain nuclear status quo. The 10th point, immediate waivers for Iranian oil exports. Immediate waivers is the 10th point. Release Iran's frozen funds upon implementation. So that's what, of course, Iran wants, to release to have them release their frozen funds. This is point number 11. Let's get to point number 12. Establish monitoring mechanism for compliance. So this is again another important key point. And as we are telling you, viewers, this is, of course, a framework. We're all hoping and progressing towards peace. But does that eventually happen is what time will tell. Start final deal negotiations after key steps. So once the key steps are taken is when the final deal negotiations will begin. So the final deal is yet to be seen, viewers. That's going to be a very interesting progression, because we've all been so intensely covering the war that this progression, of course, will be important to see as to what happens next. Final deal endorsed by UN Security Council. That's, of course, the last point, viewers. And as I said, the developments in the war were very, very interesting and intriguing. But this, of course, the progression to the deal will be something that we'll all be looking out for. Ambassador Sushil Singhal, former diplomat, is joining me. I'd like to welcome you, Ambassador Singhal. And of course, we've outlined, I was speaking to Ambassador Fabian a while ago as well. And we all were in agreement that, this is just a framework, but what eventually happens is what has to be seen. But for now, going by all of the developments, what is your take on it?
Well, thank you very much, Pawan. The thing I'd like to make is that, the expectation of the requirement of the global community was that the Strait of Hormuz should be reopened. And it's reassuring that Iran and the US have agreed that the Strait of Hormuz will be reopened. Of course, there are some fine print in this, but what Iran has said already is that for 60 days during the time of negotiations, there will not be anything, it will be opened without any regime or anything. But we also talk about, that Iran and Oman would decide about the regime afterwards. So there is a, caveat there. But I think that what is reassuring to everybody is that the Strait of Hormuz is being opened and Americans are removing the blockade of Iran and allowing Iran to sell oil. So the problem, immediate problem of the global economy is that high price of the oil and non-availability will be resolved. When it comes to the real negotiation, because it's just an intent in my view, but there is a lot of issues which has been not being addressed, be it nuclear issue, because that was the main reason why US went on war with Iran. But that has not been answered. Ballistic missiles, there was another point that Iran should not keep the ballistic missiles, but President Trump himself has apparently in France, when answering to a journalist's question, has said that so Iran has a right to keep the ballistic missiles, so there is a change in position of that. So the thing is that situation is going to improve, I hope, but there are lots of ifs and buts which will slowly unravel when this negotiation starts on the various points, including the release of the frozen fund and the $300 billion fund which they have talked about. So I don't know how it is going to happen, but the negotiations are going to be, I think, quite difficult, and there are so many opposition. And another player, which we are not talking about, is Israel and the non-state actors. There's no conversation about that. Israel, of course, is rejecting it, claiming that they are not party to it. But President Trump is trying to say that trying to impress upon them that they need to abide by it. And the role of Hezbollah, whether Iran will stop financing or supporting the non-state actors, which was a major issue during the war. It has not been addressed in this. So which will again come during this negotiations for 60 days, but already, just let me give one note of caution, that how Iran is interpreting and how the US is interpreting this 14 points, there is a vast difference. So there is going to be a lot of issues on that also, but let's see. But it's a welcome step in my view.
Yes, Ambassador Singhal very rightly said this is a welcome step because all of us are eventually hoping for peace. But I also want to talk to you about, this public spat between Trump and Netanyahu at the G7 summit. I mean, I won't be able to use the kind of language that Trump has used on air for Netanyahu, but a lot has been said. How do you see that relationship?
Well, this is the relationship of between the two sides. Particularly President Trump and Netanyahu, they have a very strange and interesting relationship. President Trump uses the colorful language very best by Netanyahu from time to time. And Netanyahu is still able to manage the President Trump. And he does the things the way he wants to do them. particularly in Lebanon and dealing with Hezbollah. And President Trump, of course, I think is now coming to the stage that he's trying the red line. Red line is that he wants this Iran deal to be successful because he doesn't want to be any more involved. And if he finds that Netanyahu is coming in the way, so I think this relationship will become slightly ugly. And as we all know, Israel still depends a lot on USA. When President Trump says that, Israel depends on the US and on him, Netanyahu is indebted to him because otherwise he would have been in jail. I see that there is not, he's not too much off the point. But Netanyahu also has his domestic constituency and himself, because he knows he's also facing elections, so he needs to show a strong hand. So what I see is that this relationship will continue, will not be as friendly as it was, because President Trump has realized that he is the threat to the deal. Then I think his position will change, and we will see some acrimony.
All right, Ambassador Singhal, thank you so much for joining me on the broadcast and your time on NewsX. And